Hello and welcome to another Old World release day. Today is the day that the world turned upside down. The old world turned upside down. So today is the release of version 1.3 of the Old World FAQ in Errata. So I basically thought we could just go through the FAQ in Errata and see what a change, see what implications there are. Now, if I miss anything, this is literally within an hour of this dropping. So if you notice anything that I have missed or any ramifications that I have missed, because hopefully I'll be able to read all the text in red, leave it below and tell us what implications and flips this has. Now, having read through it a few times and considered it, I do think there's some good changes in here. There's a few head scratching changes. Overall, I think it is changes for the game. I'm vaguely positive about it. In fact, I'm vaguely positive. That is the sort of lukewarm opinion that you're going to get on this video cast today. Strap in. So we'll start with the main general core principle rules. We first get the crunch rule added. Change the second bullet point of the crunch rule, or basically the cannon fire rule, gets changed to if the path of a cannonball meets a hill, impassable terrain, or high linear obstacle. So not low linear obstacle as in, like, say, Bretonian defensive stakes. I mean, it's not, the defensive stakes aren't getting a boost here, but a high linear obstacle, it stops immediately. No further models are hit. So that effectively means you can't deploy a cannon on a hill. I think we all know what this is meant to mean, and that is if your cannonball lands in front of or on a hill, it cannot hit a unit behind. And that is a bit confusingly worded. I mean, like, let's go to the main rulebook. Let's go to the main rulebook. And so we're in the main rulebook now, and we've got crunch. The second paragraph, if the cannonball hits impassable terrain or high linear obstacle, it stops immediately, no further models are hit. Above it, something that will encounter that will stop it dead. So, this is a humongous change if you read it verbatim. This is like complete flip on the head. Everyone go wild in the old world. However, if you're playing at an event, they should be ruling that how we all know. I mean, cannons don't shoot through hills. Cannon fire is able to be abused as it's written in the rulebook. And I think it's pretty clear what they're going for in writing this. So, yeah, go with that. It doesn't hit things behind the hills. It doesn't cross through hills. At least we know what they're in. Surely not. Oh, God. I'm about to make a case for playing with intention, which can we do? But surely that means that. Berserker Blade there is a change. It is changed to impetuous. So there's no stacking of Beastman rules by putting a Berserker Blade on your Gorbel to get units frenzy by spreading Blood Greed to other units. Now, that's a fairly hefty change to that one build of like Berserker Blade, Gorbel, stuff like that. Am I super mad at it? No. Do you retain more control of your Gorbel? And it is a bit wild that the Berserker Blade would like spread a special rule and have that interaction. So it's not something that I'm super mad at. Sorry, Tom. I'm really sorry. But it doesn't spread it. Right. Frequently asked questions. So this is things that they're not changing. They're just clarifying. We'll see if they stick to that definition, which is a ridiculous bugbear of mine. A ridiculous bugbear, but it's a bugbear. I'm sorry, I've got many faults, and this is one of them. Mislabeling Errata and FAQ. God, I must be terrible to live with. So we get into frequently asked questions. If a specific natural roll triggers an effect, is the effect still triggered if the dice is re-rolled and the re-roll gives a different result? No, you discard your previous roll. Good stuff. Good stuff. Clarifying. It seems like the normal way to do it. Nothing mental there. Magic. Casting the same enchantment or hex spells on a unit more than once has no further effect. But what about spells with the range self that affect all units within a certain distance of a caster? No, not unless stated. I've not actually encountered anyone doing that. Now, a couple of the competitive chats that I am in have thought that that's a big deal. Maybe you tell me your instances of where you were seeing that before. I don't see this as a massive change, or maybe it was happening more than I've seen. Obviously, like I play a couple of like really competitive people, like Richie, Tom Carley, speak to them all the time. Derby After Dark and UK Resin Print speak to Ed all the time, so I'm in competitive sphere chat sometimes, but I didn't personally encounter stacking of range self spells. So do let me know and aware me to how that was going on, because maybe it's like one of them things like you don't know how two infantry units actually engage in history. It's just assumed, and we don't know anymore. But I don't know when people were stacking range self spells. Now, the only one that pops into my head is Vigor, but that's on its own unit, and it's an enchantment. So, if a unit will have to wheel before or during a charge, do I have to allow for that when declaring and measuring the charge? Yes, wheeling during a charge is part of the charge move. The free wheel to align is once contact has been made. Cool. I think it's wild that isn't that none of this, other than like sort of a cannon fire mistake that we see further up. And I mean, we have had like a version B of an FAQ before, I think last year. Surely that cannon fire will get changed very, very rapidly, and not be and surely not be a problem while we're all playing it reasonably, right? Right. Combat. Models that are in base-to-base contact with different enemy units can choose which to attack. When is this decision made? At the start of the combat or when the model's turn to fight comes? Now, we were playing it like this. When the model's turn to fight comes, we were sort of maybe even defaulting out of laziness, because then we don't have to remember where attacks are allocated. However, if you were playing it the other way, because I do think it's not clear in the rulebook, or it can be interpreted as not clear. If you didn't have prior sort of Warhammer fantasy knowledge from playing 6th, or don't play like 30k or other Games Workshop games where they all do it in the same way, if you don't have that knowledge, or someone is, say you're playing a cool game, you're a cool dude, or a dudette, cool dudette, you're playing a game, and some dickhead comes out of nowhere and tries to make you allocate all your attacks at the start just to get one up on you. Or maybe you're a nice person and you do allocate all your attacks at the start just so there couldn't possibly be any cheating because you interpret it worse in your favor. So worse in your opponent's favor. Well, it's now just clarified, and I think it just makes the game run more smoothly. This is a quality of life change, I would say, and it gives a slight benefit to models with lower initiative. So, although it then makes, yes, great weapons better and ogres better because they're initiative 1, Saurus, it's your lucky day. Dwarfs that aren't the Dwarf King, it's your lucky day because you can now allocate your attacks after knowing all the results. It's not that big of a change, though. So, I mean, don't start buying up dwarf armies, but it is a slight boost to something that striking first is combat is really, really good. And if you were an elf player that always strikes first, it's a relative nerf to you, I suppose, But this is a decent change. This is a decent change / clarification. My unit charges an enemy unit that is defending a low linear obstacle, making base contact with the obstacle rather than the unit. Can my unit make impact hits or stomp attacks? No! The model must be in base-to-base contact with the enemy to make impact hits or stomp attacks. I suppose that is what it says in the rules, base-to-base, but I suppose a lot of us have just been interpreting that terrain feature that is in the way as representing the base contact as well. So it's actually nice to know that this interaction of low linear obstacles cue the defensive stakes again. But more, I'm talking like having stone walls on your boards. Like in a couple of the recent Empire games that I've been playing, we've had loads of low linear obstacle walls around fields. It's nice to get more benefits from them. So they're like sort of table dressing. Because, I mean, me and the groups that have been coming playing at my house, if you do want to come and play on the channel, hit me up. I'm well up for it. And we'll sort it out. But yeah, it's just nice to have more table dressing and to have useful table dressing or stuff that makes you want to move in different ways, stop behind a wall, because if it's not got a certain level of benefit, you just ignore it. It's thinking of other games, 30k, which I play a lot of, they reduced terrain's cover save. And one of the ramifications has been that I just don't care about getting in cover anymore because it's not worth it. A 6-up for woods is not worth it. Now, low linear obstacles, I find a lot of the time, I used to end up straddling the obstacle. Whereas if I can defend more easily against a chariot or monsters by being behind a wall, actually that adds such realms of possibility to the game that, I might actually completely change how I move my unit to respond to where that linear obstacle is. So I think this is a really, really good change. This is a thumbs up from me. I thought I'd get this done really fast. Is overkill counted by or against a champion in a challenge, or does it only count for characters? Counts all challenges, whether champions or not. Cool. Yes. If a model has Armor Bane listed in its special rules, does it apply to impact hits or stomp attacks? Yes. And that's because it's on weapons. So it's on the model rather than listed under the weapon. So say Dragon Ogres have Armor Bane on their weapon. Do you know what? I'm doubting myself giving that little thing there. Let's go to Dragon Ogres while I'm talking. Dragon Ogres have built-in Armor Bane, and then if you have, say, a great weapon on them, it stacks, but I've also got stomp attacks. So I think I've been doing this anyway, just knowing from previous style rules. But it's always nice to have it confirmed. It's like how when we were all, or like we all, but everyone and myself getting involved in the discussions are all going crazy over how does drilled work. It is nice to have stuff cleared up. Minotaurs. Let's use them as the example. Armor Bane, they've got it. So it now works on impact hits. Lots of things, including the beasts list here today. So yeah, Armor Bane on Dragon Ogres, in your stomp attacks, it works. Cool. Back to the FAQ. If a unit is charged by 2 or more enemy units, and your unit countercharges one of them, it may end its move presenting a different flank arc to the other charging units. So you pick one to countercharge, that might veer you off if they're at, say, if one's over there and one's over there, I've got to countercharge at one of them, so then I might present my flank to the enemy. Yes, this allows, you don't have to charge into the flank that you declared into, essentially. It's whichever flank or arc is presenting itself to you when you make that move. So if a unit countercharges and exposes its flank, you charge into the flank. Such are the perils of bravado. I do like how that some of these are written, and it's been through a few FAQs that you get a bit of personality in them, which can make it a bit more weird to read, but also sometimes has nice little snippets of benefit. If a unit whose troop type is infantry has been joined by a unit whose troop type is cavalry, if they charge an enemy unit with countercharge, can that unit countercharge? No. I suppose at what point does the unit... This begs the question. At what point does the unit become cavalry? Do you always default to infantry? Or if I've got a unit of 5 infantry, can I put 6 characters in there, 6 really cheap Empire captains, and they still operate as infantry? Not a big benefit, but a benefit to that specific setup of unit. How far does a model with the random movement special rule, how far do they move when making a countercharge? As stated in countercharge, a model countercharge is D3+1. Suppose it's still random. It's just a different random number. No one's countercharging 2d6. But clarified, because it's in the FAQ system. So we always knew this, right? We always knew this. Even if we didn't. I think I was still countercharging them D3+1. But even if we didn't, we all already knew this, right? Warbeast swarms fear models with the flaming attack special rules. Do warbeasts and swarms that have the immune to psychology special rule fear models that have the flaming attack special rule? Yes. See, no personality in this answer. What I want to see is yes, because flaming pigs are really fucking scary to elephants. That, like, an elephant's are pretty immune to psychology. Like, I mean, you can't, if you ever get into a staring match with an elephant, you're probably going to lose. You're not going to psych out the elephant. Like, before the battle, you all line up, you and your Hastati lads, and you're like, yeah, we're just going to look really scary to those elephants. Those elephants, and by extension, I imagine behemoths and immune to psychology swarms of snakes and stuff, you're not going to psych them out. It just doesn't happen. But apparently you do with flaming pigs. Right. If a model in a unit causes fear but other do not, do I use the unit strength of the whole unit or just the models that cause fear? Count only the unit strength of the models that cause fear. Now, this is one of the things. That is the way that I've been doing it. Fear, very often, I don't think comes into the game. Having played 6th a lot, and like in 8th it never came in, but then I went back to playing 6th before the Old World came out, and fear is really, well, I suppose it's terrifying, so maybe it was a bit too good, but I don't fear now. It never comes off. It never comes off. Maybe fear needs a little bit of a boost. 2025, 2026 FAQ, fear boost. That's what I want to see. What happens if a unit with the move through cover special rule is joined by a character without it? Units move at the speed of the slowest model. Therefore, Bob the Empire Captain that doesn't have move through cover is going to trip up over everything and really slow your... The white lions have move through cover? Your white lions are slowed by that idiot human that doesn't have move through cover. And whatever, the example stands. I know you can put that in an army or join that unit, but yeah, you slow down by the slowest model. It's a bit weird when, say, like, feigned flight. Why can I feigned flight or reserve move? Because 50% of the unit has got it. But you can't be like, don't step there. Don't step there. You guys just don't help. I suppose it's a grim world, and this represents the grimness of that world in that you guys are just well unwilling to help out. Like, anyone that is... Like, your unit champions get helped out. They're fine. They've got move through cover. Anyone that's like officer class and higher, everyone just fucking hates them. Everyone hates them. No fragging going on in the Old World, though, I don't think. Is the armor value of a regeneration saved improved by a shield, barding, or magic item that improves armor? No. And this is a blue, like, changed one. So, blue being revised, updated entries. But I think I think they've just expanded the amount of words in that sentence and things that apply to it. But I think that was like first FAQ that was cleared up. Can a model make a regeneration save when it loses a wound? For example, when it loses a wound due to being unstable, can I attempt to make a save? Effectively, wounds that are lost rather than suffered by hits, you can't make a save against that. So skeletons crumbling, no regeneration saves. Get hit with an axe, regeneration. Cool. Are units that deploy due to scout special rule counted when determining which players finished deploying their army first? Yes. I know that this was something that we're doing already. It's the way that we've been playing it, because I think it does say that in the rulebook, and this is obviously just clarified. But it's something that I would like to see errated in the entire other way, because it's such a big thing when considering an army, especially when vanguarding units can charge, and we're seeing more and more armies getting vanguard banners that can still charge in the first turn. So like Peg army finishes deploying first. I've got loads of Pegasus Knights. One of them vanguards with in the the exiles list, and I don't get, and I can still get the +1, but a unit of 10 brigands with crossbows and BS3, they scout, you ain't getting +1. That's mental. That's mental. I know he's a problem with it, all right, and it can be, stuff can be abused, like if they let things deploy outside of deployment zones. It's a bit of a weird hill to die on with the go first +1. But it's also not a hill I'm willing to die on. When a unit that has succumbed to stupidity moves, how far must it move? As far as the controlling player wishes, provided it moves in a straight line. When I move a unit that's succumbed to stupidity, can I move it into base contact with an enemy unit? No. So no, like, accidental contact charges by trolls in the Troll Horde. Big nerf. But if you're playing Troll Horde competitively, you're already a champion and probably like didn't really want to win that much anyway. When do you declare that you are using Swift Stride? Before making a charge, fleet, or pursuit roll. So this is a big change, because in the rulebook it says you may add Swift Stride and doesn't specify when. What you could previously do is roll your flee move and go, oh, I've got like an 11. I don't want to be that much further away. Oh, with my fallback in good order, I only want to be like a small amount away or get the exact distance away. And then, I'll add the Swift Stride, or even I'll roll the Swift Stride and then choose to add it or not, because you may add a Swift Stride, a D6 worth of roll. Now you've got to declare I'm using my Swift Stride, roll them all, and you've just got to like it or lump it. You've got to take it. I think it's a positive change. It's in the game of like cavalry being actually quite. I know Monster Hammer is a thing, but cavalry better than infantry, and this is a relative change in the favour of infantry, which I am massively in favour of. Having just come off like 6 games of Empire on the bounce, even if 4 of those were against other Empire players, it really demonstrates the lack of capability infantry has compared to other things. So I think it's a positive change in its relative redressing of how this goes. If a character without the Vanguard special rule joins a unit with it during deployment, can the character make a Vanguard move with the unit? No. What's more, if the unit is formed, it will not be able to make a Vanguard move. The presence of a character without the Vanguard special rule within its ranks prevents it. However, if the unit is in skirmish formation, it can make a Vanguard move as normal, leaving the character behind. That's a bit of a weird interpretation to come down on. So say like you're in a close order and you've got Vanguard, your character can't move up with the boys, but the skirmishers can all sprint forwards around the character. And I suppose it makes a bit of sense, but like game wise, it's a bit convoluted that can happen. And I'm not sure that was ever clear in the rule book or unclear in the rule book or ever could be interpreted in that way. So I suppose my Pegasus Knights can vanguard 9 inches forwards and leave 2 inches between them, so still be massively up the board. And like Bob the Bold is just left on the lines and he's still part of the unit because it's 2 inches coherency. So he's going to like just sail in to contact. So a bit of a weird sort of I would say this is errata. Right. Next one, moving on before I spend like 20 minutes going over whether it's errata or not. How does a unit of skirmishers form up when they are charged by 2 or more different enemy units with from different directions? Or even from the same direction, I think this applies to. The skirmishers should form up against the first charging unit to move into contact with them. The remaining enemy units then charge the formed skirmisher unit. If any units are unable to complete their charge moves, their charges are failed. This is a bit of a weird interaction. I fucking hate how skirmishers operate in all editions of the game. I sort of think skirmishers should form them up like a normal unit, but they're just 360 in all directions, and you just use them 360 in all directions, but we know where the lines of that unit are. Because it gets more and more convoluted the way, like when we go through these erratas and the original rules, and just like, I hate charging skirmishers into skirmish. We all know that pain. Like, oh, my skirmishers are going to have to charge your skirmishers this turn. Because it's just like, I need to do it. Can you not avoid it? I can't avoid it. I'm really sorry. I've got to charge your skirmishers with my skirmishers. But yeah, so it's the first unit. So if you can manipulate this in that whichever unit you have that is smaller, like you normally would charge one unit with 2, and you meet in the middle so that both units can get in. You can purposefully do this so that the skirmishers can only rank to your unit and then line up behind, and then they've got a really small frontage. And maybe even your own unit, the second unit, can't get in. Really weird. Clarifying some skirmisher rules. It's neither here nor there, I don't think. I think this is like a 50-50 all day, bro. Do skirmishers have flanks or rear arcs while engaged in combat? No. It makes sense, but like the direction of fight is that. Why do I not care if I get charged in the side? I've still got psychology. Before that raises any further questions in my own head, like why do immune to psychology dudes like still hate getting charged in the flank? But moving on, the next blue one, characters. If a unit is subject to any leadership modifiers, uses the general's inspiring presence rule. Does the unit ignore these modifiers? So say my general at leadership 9 spreads their leadership to like Empire General leadership 9, spreads it to state troop unit. The state troop unit has Gathering Darkness already cast on it, so we'll be at -2 to its 7. But the Inspiring Presence takes me back up to a 9. You're now back to a 7 because the -2 comes off the general's leadership. Because it goes into effect because they're terrified. It's just clarification, right? I think a lot of people were doing it that way already. A clumsy unit cannot be joined by a character that is not also clumsy. But can a clumsy character join a unit that is not clumsy? Yes. So essentially, like Timothy the Troll can join a unit of goblins, but Gregory the Goblin cannot join a unit of trolls because Gregory the Goblin would be crushed by all of the trolls. But Timothy the Troll has enough awareness to not crush the goblins. Sorry for using those as the examples. They were the first things that come into my head. Does a unit that is joined by a character of a different troop type gain the rules associated with the character troop type? This is sort of tied into the cavalry character joining an infantry squad countercharge question. No, they don't gain the rules associated with the character's troop type. Cool. Cool. So you can't make this horrendous stack of all different character types in one unit. Is the armor save... Basically, is the armor value of a ward save improved by a shield? Same as regeneration. No, nothing improves a ward save unless it specifically states. Next. Bearing 2 or more obsidian lodestones gives better magic resistance, but does an obsidian lodestone improve the magic resistance granted from a different source? No. Why? Why doesn't an obsidian lodestone? Why doesn't any magic resistance stack? Like, I get how, say, like, well, I've got 20 dwarf thunderers in a single unit. I don't get magic resistance minus 20. I get how a Thane joining that unit doesn't help. But why doesn't a magic item that gives magic resistance not stack with another item that gives magic resistance? Because then they're surely not magical in themselves, or at least they're null. So, it's just boggling. It's just boggling. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to stack the fucking things. Right, next. Does a magic standard that affects a unit's weapons, the Razor standard, for example, also make those weapons magical, giving the magical attack special rule? Not unless the description of the standard gives it specifically. Generally speaking, purchasing a magic item doesn't conjure up additional bonuses from the Aether. No, but it conjures up magic that affects the weapons from the Aether. Like, that seems nonsensical to me. Why does the magic affect my weapons, but the weapons not become magically, like, ensorcelled? It seems nonsensical to me. Like, I get why. I get why, because it's just the game usage of that, but it seems entirely nonsensical. I did, however, skip a magenta thing down here. How does Spectral Doppelganger interact with weapons that have strike first or strike last? The spell is cast at the wizard's initiative, meaning attacks generated by the spell are made at the wizard's initiative. However, if the casting wizard wishes to use a weapon with the strike's last special rule, those attacks are made at the initiative 1. So, if my wizard is using a great weapon, and I've got a hand weapon, and I've got a great weapon, I can, at my hand weapon's initiative, strike with my hand weapon, and Spectral Doppelganger my great weapon, because it's made at the wizard's initiative. Or it means I use a great weapon, it goes at great weapon initiative. That's how I read this. Tell me in the comments how fucking ludicrous I'm reading that. It's a bit baffling because it sort of says 2 different things in 2 lines. We can even go over this in more detail. Let's go over this in more detail. Oh, yeah. Let's zoom in. The spell is cast at the wizard's initiative, meaning attacks generated by the spells are made at the wizard's initiative. All good so far. It's done at the wizard's initiative. However, if the casting wizard wishes to use a weapon with the strike's last special rule, by which I think that means if, like, say, my ogre with a great weapon is using the great weapon with their, like, normal attacks that drops me to initiative 1, the doppelganger goes at initiative 1. I think this needed a slightly different wording to the clarification. On first reading, it seems entirely... It seems obvious to me on first reading. Like, it's sort of... It's one of those, every time they do an FAQ, it's... The documents would be 1,000,000 pages long if they specified everything exactly. This one, on first reading, seems obvious to me. On second reading, it seems a bit baffling, but I read it in a certain way still. But I could see how it could be read in another way. Tell me what you think below. That's how I read it. If I have a hand weapon and a great weapon, and I choose to hit you rolling with my weapon skill versus your weapon skill, with my hand weapon, I can doppelganger my great weapon. And then get hits, because it obviously doppelganger generates hits. It's not an attack, it's a hit. And this is the same, like it's the same across lots of Games Workshop games. There's a difference between attacks and hits. So I think that needs to be both that would help to clarify this rule and doppelgangering in general. And I slightly think maybe we need to get rid of doppelganger. May be too good. I think that's not breaking any new ground there for me to have said that, but I do still think it's potentially too good. So magic items bearing 2 or more obsidian lodestones we've just done. If a wizard wears a wizarding hat, does it increase their wizard level by by 1 because the wizarding hat gives you the wizard level 1? No. Like obsidian lodestones, shit don't stack. As stated in the item's description, the wearer of the wizarding hat is a level 1 wizard that knows 1 randomly generated spell. This is clearly a huge detriment to a powerful wizard, but maybe a boon to any character that is not a wizard. So this just helps stop whackery, because there's no other reason than to try and exploit to get level 5, which is a bit of an exploit, that you could possibly interpret that. He's willfully interpreting to get yourself to level 5, rather than it clearly being used to be able to get to level 5. I'm a bit confused that it even needed to go in there, but if that was a frequently asked question, I'm glad they answered it. Because that's a bit of the head scratcher, isn't it? It's sometimes it's who is asking this question? Next question. Can a wizard with a lore familiar choose one of their faction's signature spells instead of the signature spell of their chosen lore? Mental. No. They can't choose from their chosen lore. Now let's go to the magic items section and go through exactly what this says. So, lore familiar. The owner of a lore familiar does not randomly generate their spells. Instead, they may choose spells they know from their chosen lore, including that lore's signature spell. I suppose it says exactly that. But that sort of gets steps on by the signature faction spell rules, because which one sort of overlaps and trumps the other one? Does lore familiar trump your factions one? Yeah, it does. Lore familiar does, as we know by this most recent FAQ. This, I think, is actually, it's one that you initially read and go, what? But I think it's actually a really positive change for the game. They've got a mechanic where we randomly generate spells, for better or for worse, and I think actually, storytelling wise, why does my wizard not always know the same spells? Gameplay wise, it means that you can't just rely and definitely just get the best spell every single time. Now, since that randomness is desired by the game's designers, they've given us a system for randomly generating spells. Now, having a 30-point magic item that entirely ignores that big mechanic of the game, I think is a negative thing for the game. So having this be FAQ'd to not allow the signature spell of your faction, I think it seems super harsh. Just being fucking what? It's very confusing. But I do think the ramifications of it are positive for the game. And honestly, that's a fully personal taste thing, because it's a common magic item. So who cares? We can all do it. Magic is pretty strong in the game, I would say. I do think there should be options for not taking magic in the game. And there's currently not. I don't think you should have to take a wizard. but currently you do have to. So having something that just like tones magic down a bit and stops a magic item being auto include, like if other than arguments of like say sometimes you just use an arcane familiar and roll 5 spells, I think we're definitely going to see more of that now. But outside of that argument that we're just going to see more of them, I do think it's just a good thing to not always bank on I'm going to spec into Doppelganger Wizard. You're still going to be able to do Doppelganger Wizard with a lore familiar, but now you can't have insert faction spell here. Like I won't be with a damsel in the second rank. I won't be doppelgangering from the second rank with a ogre blade, and also casting the lady's gift to get a regeneration save. That is the benefit. Some models can be found in one faction's army list, so this is just changed. Essentially, what this comes down to is can like stuff that's cross army lists, like Dragon Ogre Shaggoths, can they take things from their own list? Can they take things, say, Dragon Ogre Shaggoth in Warriors of Chaos? Do they take Warriors of Chaos items? They take from the Beastman Bray herds all the time. Now, one thing that's come up in, say, like recent Arcane Journals is we've got like mercenary Badland Ogres. They will take from the Orcs and Goblins list because they're in the Orcs and Goblins Arcane Journal. And it is what it is. It is what it is. It is a clarification. It's like outside of rule. I think it's good rules wise because they were written meant for that specific magic items to be in the list. It's weird that my Badlands Ogres that I'm going to include in my Empire army, because Badlands Ogres are the ones with a magical flag, that they're taking Orcs and Goblins flags. But it is what it is. It is what it is. I am not upset. Next, let's do Forces of Fantasy first. First change. Questing Knights go to unit strength of 3+, unit size of 3+. I think this is a good change. It means they're more viable to take in a list because you can just take a smaller unit that doesn't cost you as many points. It's a bit chaffier. I mean, it gets them into a list more because they're more easily to fit. That stubborn, like having a little stubborn little trio to run around is good. I mean, if trolls can be taken in singles and dragon ogres in singles, why can't questing knights be taken in 3 wounds worth of questing knights? Especially when it brings them more in line with Grail Knights, Pegasus Knights, etc., which are all 3+ in those units. So it's like the veteran knights and onwards go to 3+, questing knights reach it. I think it's a good change because when does anyone take those beautiful questing knight models? Hardly ever. Next one, Sisters of the Thorn. Basically, change the Daughters of Eternity special rule to models with this special rule have a 4 at ward against any wounds suffered. That sounds very not changey. Let's go to Wood Elves. It is in fact a change because this 4 at ward against any wounds suffered was previously the unit, so it could be interpreted as applying to characters joining the unit, which I suppose like Mental Staglord in a unit of Sisters of the Thorn that are choosing their spells could just be crazy 4 at ward. However, additionally to this, change the first sentence of Deepwood Coven special rule to include a unit of Sisters of the Thorn knows a single spell randomly generated from their controlling player before armies are deployed from either battle magic or elementalism. They were chosen previously. So that is the change there. And gone are the 7 Pillars of Fire lists that Wood Elves could do. I'm making up 7, but like we're talking ridiculous numbers that have been seen, especially in like online tournaments and what has then spawned from online tournaments into regular tournaments because people have experimented, know it's an insane thing from playing an online tournament, and therefore start taking them to normal tournaments. And it is just crazy that they chose them so could run around doing that. Good change, good change. Goblin Hewers changed from wounds and attacks to 2 from 1. So in combat, you've got a bit more of a Slayer bulwark against dying. This is good. Guardian of the Sacred Sites in Kingdoms of Bretonnia. The Green Knight cannot come out of magical vortexes open ground because the first type of cover listed within the first type of terrain listed in the terrain section is open ground. So that counts as terrain, so the Green Knight can come from it. No. Or hills, or any construct such as walls and buildings. So you can't create woods and then come out of it. But in the main things, I do still think we need to, like, when setting up boards, like, it doesn't need clarifying, but if some of the other things are being clarified, it is hilarious that the first type of terrain in the terrain section bit is open terrain, and you're not allowed to put any type of terrain within 12 from the center of the battlefield or whatever it is. And they've acknowledged it because it needs a clarification here. Do love it. Do love it. Right. Frequently asked questions of the specific armies. Dwarf Mountain holds. Basically, if a musician or standard bearer in a unit of slayers that has been upgraded to a giant slayer is killed, what happens? Basically, you keep going through the giant slayers until all the giant slayers are dead, picking up that standard and musician. And then any remaining troll slayers will pick up the standard and musical instruments, which I think is a really good change. It just clarifies easily how you do it. Is they still never die, and you have the set number that at the start of the game you can just track on a piece of paper, you like next to the unit or wherever, and you basically the last things to die are the standard and musician, and people just keep picking them up separately. They're not protected from dying by being this like standard bearer musician that are giant slayers. It also clarifies that giant slayers aren't champions, so those 2 in that command group will die before the giant slayers get left. Like the giant slayer isn't a champion that gets left to last before dying. The giant slayers get killed off at the same rate as everyone else. Then the command group dies at the end, regardless of who picked it up. So basically, if your full unit or your full front rank is giant slayers, and then behind that is troll slayers, your front rank of giant slayers will pick up that standard and musician and all die, and then it will be allocated to troll slayers, and they'll pick it up and all die. It just makes it really simple. If a unit bearing a standard inscribed with the Master Rune of Hesitation falls back in good order and is pursued and caught by an enemy unit, does that rune take effect? Yes, pursuing counts as like pursuing and into contact counts as charging. The rune goes off. Excellent. The Arcane Journal, do runes inscribed upon a Doomseeker's whirling blades of death apply to impact hits? Yes, as stated under the whirlwind of death, impact hits caused by a Doomseeker resolve using the profile of its whirling blades of death, which includes any runes the character is inscribed with. Which is a weird clarification because impact hits aren't hand weapons clarified elsewhere. So it's just weird that they've put a confusing rule in. Like, it's not a problem. It just seems to go against the logic of some other things. Not mad at it. It's not a particularly terrible thing. Doomseekers are cool. It's just like a bit of confusion. There's not actually a problem with it. Empire of Man clarifications. Before a steam tank charges, can it use the steam power special rule to increase how far it can move? It's just a clarification. No, it can only be used instead of marching. In other words, you can't increase your movement while charging because it says only when marching. Kingdom of Bretonnia. Can a character with shielded lady special rule retire to the rear of the unit after issuing a challenge, enabling them to avoid their opponent's attacks. No, once a challenge has been issued and accepted, neither combatant can retire until the challenge is resolved. Chivalry demands it. Chivalry also demands that my fucking paladin steps in the way of that damsel getting mooked. But then again, I shouldn't be issuing challenges with the damsel, or you shouldn't be. I've not been. It's just a balance thing, right? Good. You don't tie up that character, and avoid the attacks. Who was doing this? Where did this question come from? Tell me below. Was it a big event? Has there been a big argument, I suppose, over this happening? My army includes a character with the Gauntlet of the Duel, and I want them to challenge a specific enemy character. Can my opponent choose a different model to accept the challenge? Yes, challenges are issued broadly. They are not issued to specific models. If several models could accept the challenge issued by the bearer of the Gauntlet of the Duel, one must, but not one specific one. However, if your opponent refuses it, they are a coward and a cur, so you should let them know immediately. And always issue to a specific model. Not under the rules, but under the code. The code that means that we issue to specific models. So we know exactly who is a coward when they refuse it. Especially that fucking warrior priest. Right, next one. Is a charging lance blunted by an enemy unit countercharging? No, as both units are charging, the clause that a lance is blunted if it is charged and does not countercharge is negated. Cool. We surely all knew that that's how it should work anyway, but that's how it is clarified to work. High Elf Realms. Does Martial Prowess special rule allow models to make supporting attacks with weapons that do not have the fighting extra rank special rule? No. Martial Prowess grants the ability to make supporting attacks to the flank and rear as well as to the front. It does not grant the ability because I suppose there is slight interpretation of you can make supporting attacks to the flank and rear. And he's like, my hand weapon can make supporting attacks to the flank and rear. That is a willfully funny way of interpreting that special rule. Amazing that needed clarifying. Oh, much love, elf players. You are something else. Right. Next stuff. Ravening Hordes 1.2. The headbutting add the following to the beginning of the rule. 0.1 per model. I had to look up but he's a hat. And you can only give one per location. And it says this in the general principles. But I suppose an at isn't a hat. And a hat is put on a location on the body. An at is maybe able to be willfully misinterpreted. Next, Skin Wolves. Change the base size to 50 by 50. Under options, change Skin Wolf Jarl to Skin Wolf Jarl Champion. Add fear to the Skin Wolf list of special rules. A bit of a swing either way. A bigger base size means you'll get less in contact. So therefore striking with their full number of attacks. So that's a bit, and it'd be harder to wheel if you're not in skirmishers. It is what it is. It is what it is. Add fear to the Skin Wolves. Cool. They are pretty terrifying. And Skin Wolf Jarls can accept and issue challenges. And as we know from previous general errata, they can rack up challenges. Cool. Warfire Dragons add close order to the Warfire Dragon list of special rules. Excellent. How are victory points for Night Goblin units scored when they've released one or more fanatics? Basically, when the unit dies, the fanatics are basically scored from now. According to this, fanatics are an upgrade for the unit. Their cost is included when working out VPs for the unit itself. In other words, the death of individual fanatics are not worth any VPs, but destroying the unit that is concealing them would earn you the VPs for the fanatics as part of the unit's points cost. Cool. If I upgrade a unit of Boar Boys to have the Big 'Uns special rule, Do their warboars benefit as well? Yes. Right. So this sort of confused me. So it does note that it's only when charging, because the big uns rule only comes into effect when your big uns, not charging, sorry, it only comes into effect when you're in combat. So impact hits are done at the unit's base unmodified strength. But why does this? I suppose the paws are stronger to carry the bigger orcs, but they've specified elsewhere, like Laurels of Victory doesn't affect the mount. So again, it's slightly weird that this is like a different track being taken here to examples that we've seen previously, such as Laurels of Victory not affecting my Demigriff or Griffin. Not particularly mad at it. Cool. It's a thing. Not unhappy with it, but just so. Can the glowy green amulet be used by a character that isn't a wizard? I think this is a good clarification. Yes, because it says that it means that you can't make a wizardly dispel attempt, essentially, and it clarifies that you essentially can go in any model because it's a talisman, and you don't have to be a wizard to utilize the benefit, because it could be interpreted as you've got to be able to make a wizardly dispel attempt with that model to be able to use the glowy green amulet with that model to replace wizardly dispel. In that if you've not got a wizardly dispel to replace, you can't replace anything with glowy green amulet because it requires wizardly dispel. Not the case. You can put it on any model. I think we was always already using it like that anyway, but I can see after like cross-referencing going through these before why that was in there. Can the size of a range of self-spells aura be increased by the Idol of Gork? No, the aura of the range of effect self-spell is not its range. It's a... Can the range size of... No is the thing. I'm trying to reason out like why it's not, but the answer is just no. It's neither here nor there. It's a bit gamey to increase it. It's not... It takes effect within that range. It affects that radius. What happens when it, as a Warriors of Chaos, Arcane Journal, what happens if I wish to issue or accept a challenge to fight a Warriors duel but do not have any single wound champions in my army? Or what happens if you want to accept a Warriors duel and you don't have single models? Actually, you roll off to determine who takes the first turn as normal. You don't fight a Warriors duel. Cowards. When fighting a Warriors duel challenge between two unit champions, are such things as magic standards carried by their units counted? No, the duel is fought between the two champions alone, without any support from their units, including not getting buoyed on by that big flag that you've got. I kind of like it. It means that I know sort of the Norse list aren't doing, the Wolves of the Sea, aren't doing so badly at the moment, but it's a one-on-one duel. It's mano a mano. One wundo a one wundo. It's a good change. It's a good clarification. Beastman Brave Herds. Does a unit with a Blood Green special rule always roll only a single d6 when making a pursuit roll, or only while frenzied? Only while frenzied. Sort of double check this when was going through it. I can see it's a different sentence, so I can see how like 1 point has ended and the pursuit roll was separate. But it's a bit of a bonus to Minotaurs. Competitive play, when I've played them against them, they're pretty all right. They're all right. They perform as expected. In competitive play, they're pretty rubbish, especially when compared to Dragon Ogres, though that's always a negative comparison to everything. It's good that it's only well frenzied. Can a Casket of Souls move at the end of the shooting phase of its turn using the reserve move special rule, should it have it? Yes. Whilst the Casket of Souls is an immovable object, This rule clearly states that it prevents the model from moving during the remaining move subphase. It does not prevent movement at other times or during other phases. What? What? That's crazy. That is crazy. So extrapolate it out. If you can find a way to get any immovable models, so Bretonnian trebuchet, fucking dwarf anvil of doom. If you can get those them immovable objects moving in the shooting phase, cool. That is crazy. That is crazy sauce. Like potentially Casket of Souls, it can really help with because of like the it being bound levels and stuff like that. Or you can like plan on it for next turn. I do think it's pretty mental of a like sort of a fluff justification reason to come down on, because we like this game came from like role playing games. It's where Warhammer originated, and it's sort of half treated as such. I mean there's a bigger section in the rule book, I think, dedicated to a campaign system. There's not a matched play guide in the rule book. There is a campaign system in the rule book. But we can reserve move Casket of Souls because it specifically says it in the special rule. It's crazy. It's crazy. World is upside down at that one. Don't know what to think. And that is the last thing. That is the last thing. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully I didn't go on too many tangents. If you liked this video, if you like the recent news, please do all the YouTubey stuff to let me know to make more content like this. If you really like it, if you want it in audio format, there is a Patreon membership below where you can get access to the Discord, ad-free videos, early release videos, unless it's super last minute like this, because it came out today. Breaking news. And with that, I'll see you in the next one in a bit.